All right. Yeah, so today's webinar is on the SAP BI Platform Support Tool 2.0. My name is Toby Johnston. I work for SAP Product Support, and I'm the product owner of the BI Platform Support Tool. So today's agenda for this webinar, I'm going to quickly talk about the SAP Supportability Solutions for 2016, use cases for the BI Platform Support Tool. I want to cover what the roadmap and the release schedule for the 2.0 version looks like for 2016. And then I want to take a chance to talk about the architecture in the new 2.0 version and try to give you some insight into how things are working behind the scenes. And then, most importantly, going to get to the demo and try to show off some of the new functionality. So SAP has a number of different solutions, some more appropriate for particular landscapes and others for other types of landscapes. We developed the BI Platform Support Tool because we needed a simple solution for data discovery. We wanted to provide some alerting capabilities, and mainly our goal is to create a next generation type of support. So you'll hear more about that this year. But our real goal is to provide more proactive solutions to our customers that are running the BI platform, so that we're more of a proactive support rather than just a reactive type support. Also, change analysis is a big part of our troubleshooting, and we'll talk about that in a bit, and also end-to-end tracing. So the middle solution, CA-APM Introscope, formerly known as Wiley Introscope, is another solution that's kind of a byproduct of the SAP Solution Manager. And in the past few years, we've had a solution where you could stand up Introscope server for metrics and monitoring and deeper root cause analysis. And right now, I wanted to mention, because I know some people are having issues getting the right agent, there was a new diagnostic agent that came out, and that doesn't have the functionality for the standalone system, but I wanted to let everybody know that we are working on a solution for that. I just talked to the owner of the diagnostic agent, and we're working on that early this year. So that's coming. So sorry for those who are waiting on that. And then the final solution, the SAP Solution Manager, which is really targeted for those big landscapes where you're already using a BW or ERP system, and have the basis and the basis team that's available to actually stand it up and keep it running for you. But the SAP Solution Manager, of course, provides the most capabilities, especially if you're using BW or ERP systems. So who's been using the support tool? Well, obviously, support is using it nearly on every incident, and really our goal is to end the information ping pong that happens when you open an incident. So we want to be able to have all of the information about the environment that you're troubleshooting up front, attach it to the incident, and then we can go straight into message processing or incident processing and don't need to do the 100 questions back and forth, so that saves a lot of time. Administrators have been using it for drift reporting, proactive alerts, and change management. Our consulting and COE groups have been using it to assist and accelerate service delivery, so your enterprise support services like go-live checks, customer quality checks, and business process optimization checks. The support tool has been a great help in gathering up the information that we need to feed into the algorithms that we use to kind of do those assessments. Also, although we're not directly a sizing tool, the information in the landscape analysis report is really useful to get a handle on what the environment looks like, what is the topology, what are your settings, and then it makes it an easier process to feed that into the sizing calculators. And then lastly, the product group has also been using the tool to help with landscape validation and deeper root cause analysis tasks. And I wanted to take a chance to say thanks. We've had over 28,000 downloads since we rolled out the very first version, so thanks everybody for your support. It's been a great success, and I'm happy to say that we've been approved essentially to keep moving forward with the development of the tool. So the 2.0 version will see many more improvements, and I'll talk about kind of what's next here in a few minutes. But the point of this slide here is just to show you that we're planning to have a monthly release cycle. So each of the patches will come out around the end of the month, and we plan to release that throughout the year. In parallel, we're also working on the first support pack for the BI tool, and really the difference here is our goal is to get as many features into the patches as we can, but for those bigger changes, those will be targeted for the first SP. Right now, we don't have a timeline for the first SP because, well, it's going to be probably Q3 before that gets released. Okay, so I wanted to go into the architecture, quickly talk about the different analysis types. The server and services is where all of your BI settings and metrics that come directly from your BI info store. And we use an API that's optimized to pull back this information. It's derived from the Solution Manager SLD data supplier. But in the end, it's actually a number of info store queries. The content analysis lets us understand what type of content you're using in your environment, so we can tell, are you using Crystal, are you using Webby, do you have a lot of instances, that sort of thing. The schedule inspector helps us understand why reports are failing and which reports are taking a lot of disk space, so we can clean those up if necessary. Also, in version 2.0, you can tell which are your longest running instances. And also new to 2.0 is the date filter, so you can specify a date range that you want to do that analysis on. License key basically pulls back what the net rights are for your keys. So all of your keys that are added into the CMC, we can tell if any functionality might be missing and what are you entitled to use. I did want to point out that we never use the license key information for any sort of auditing, or we don't care about that in support. So rest assured, the actual key codes is actually blanked out in the report. So the platform search can be a problematic application if you don't tune it correctly. However, if it is tuned correctly, then it makes searching a lot better. So we wanted to add an analysis that would do that kind of tuning and take a look at what optimizations need to be made for that to run optimally. The hardware summary is a hardware analysis that comes from each of the nodes in your landscape, and we're relying on the SAP Host Agent, which is new to 2.0, to get that information from each node and securely send that back to the BI platform support tool. Authentication just lets us see how you have your authentication configured, which ones you're using. The semantic analysis lets us understand what's the impact to changes for a particular universe or a connection, and to know which universes are associated with the most Webby documents. Web Application Server Analysis connects to your JVM on your application server over JMX and pulls back all of the interesting metrics directly from the JVM of your application server. And then lastly, the patch history basically gives us a breadcrumb trail of what patches you've installed on your BI servers. That way we can tell, was the patches successful? Did it commit successfully? In what order did you install the patches? A lot of times that can lead to a problem, or can help with solving a problem. Okay, so I want to talk about the landscape report architecture. There's two different phases in the landscape analysis report. The first phase is the data extraction phase. The second phase is the report generation phase. And by decoupling these two phases, it makes it such that the landscape data is portable. So you can run the landscape a lot easier, and it gives us the interactive analysis of the browser that's included with the BI support tool. So during the data extraction phase, the user selects what type of analysis they want to include. The user logs into a CMS system, and from that CMS system, we do a lookup to your landscape configuration. Based on the CMS system, we can tell exactly what nodes are part of that landscape, and then start to extract the data. Once the data is extracted, we load up an alert definition from the support tool's actual install directory. So as we upgrade the support tool patch by patch, we're making changes to the alert definitions to get rid of the ones that maybe don't make sense, and also add new alerts for issues that we discovered during over time by our support engineers. Once the alert definitions are loaded, we evaluate the thresholds and then write those into the XML. So the alerts are evaluated at extraction time, not when you view the report. The landscape data is stored in an XML, and that's stored in your user's BI support tool directory. And the reason why we did this is, number one, for security reasons. The data is stored in your user's directory, which is only accessible by your Windows user. Also, so that when you upgrade the support tool, your history, your historical instances of the landscape reports will still be there. The next phase is the report generation phase, and to generate the report, we go and we read the data from the landscape data XML. Each report is rendered based on what analysis types were chosen for that report. And then the content is displayed in the browser widget. So for each of the landscape reports, or the analysis types that you choose, there will be a tab, and then you can actually view more than one report and compare between the two if you want. And then using JavaScript, CSS, and jQuery, we make the report more navigable and interactive, and we're constantly improving that and making it kind of richer with every release. And then we've actually started using the CVOM engine, the same charting engine that's part of the BI platform, to generate charts and visualizations, and expect to see more of those, but currently those are there to help visualize some of the data that's maybe not so interesting to look at with just numbers. So as you run reports, all of those reports are stored in your data folder in your users directory, and then when you go to the report history, you can see all of those various reports that you ran along with the date. You can delete them. You can open them from here by double-clicking or right-clicking, and you can tell with the icons which analysis types were chosen for that report. So new to the 2.0, previously in the 1.x versions, all of the alerts that were in the landscape report were all static, so you couldn't change those. We had to define them in the code. Now what we've done is kind of broken away from that and made it a user customizable framework. Currently, in the current version, we have simple alerts that you can customize, or you can, if you don't like what alerts are being triggered, you can change the threshold, or you can just delete it altogether, and then you won't see that alert in the next report run. A simple alert is limited to one property or metric with one operator, like greater than, less than, contains, etc., and then one threshold value. In a future version, we'll have what's called complex alerts that will allow you to combine those simple alerts with and or, so that you can do more complex evaluations of the data. And right now, in order to do those complex evaluations, we're using what's called system alerts. So we've hard-coded a number of alerts, such as key code expiring in 30, 60, or 90 days, or we take a look at all your BI nodes and check the patch history to see that they're all at the same build level, and if not, we throw a system alert. And then the system alerts aren't customizable, but once we move that logic into the complex alerts, you'll be able to customize those as well. Again, the alert definitions are stored in your install folder, not your users folder. And then the alert summary, and I'll show you that in the demo, is where all of the alerts that are triggered across all of the analysis reports, those are all brought together so that you can quickly tell what was triggered for a report. And again, I just wanted to talk about the user persistence. So when you go to set up your landscape definition, all of that information is stored in the preferences.xml so that it's stored when you do an upgrade. And then new to 2.0 is the host agent integration. And typically we ask that you have a host agent on each of the nodes in your landscape so that we can get the most robust information. If you have a diagnostic agent, a solution manager diagnostic agent already, you can use that. However, you may need to upgrade the host agent. It's a very simple process, and that'll be up on the wiki. What we found is that the older diagnostic agents have a host agent that doesn't provide all of the hardware data. So a simple couple-minute upgrade will fix that problem. So the host agent, we use that for a number of things: the hardware summary, the patch history, and also for the end-to-end trace wizard. Something we're working on in 2016 is a predictive maintenance system. And what this is, we call it the reverse 911. I know that 911 isn't the actual emergency number in all the countries that you may be from, so sorry about that. But the idea is that it's a predictive maintenance, so it gives you the ability to upload your landscape XML securely to our SFTP data store. And then we have a data services job that consumes those XMLs and then stores it in a database that we can do queries against. So we can do proactive checks against the data and then send you an email notification if there's something such as a security vulnerability or anything that would require a targeted kind of email to let you know about some sort of an issue proactively. This is an ongoing project. You'll notice that in the tool that there is the interface for uploading is already in there. On the back end, some of the logic is still being worked on, so there'll be more information about that coming out on the SCN as soon as that's ready. So what are we working on in 2016? A diagnostic integrity report. So we've already got code that does this, that we use kind of on a case-by-case basis. It does things like checks info objects to make sure that they have all of the properties that they need. For example, the SI files property bag, a lot of times that gets corrupted during a promotion, for example, or it will prevent you from doing a promotion. This goes through and crawls through your info objects, and then we'll give you a report on which objects need to be cleaned up or which ones are corrupted. This also includes things like your server objects that might have a corrupt property that gives you a null pointer exception or something in the CMC. Also, things like properties or objects that are missing the SI kind property, which will cause all kinds of weird issues. So our goal is to give you a way to run a diagnostic against your CMS info objects database and proactively clean out the bad objects before you get weird issues down the road. Scheduling interface. This is coming along quite nicely. Very soon you'll be able to schedule the landscape report directly from the support tool client to your BusinessObjects platform. So you'll be able to, it'll automatically kind of publish a program object and then run in your BI platform based on whatever scheduling recurrence that you would like. So, for example, if you want to run the landscape report once a week, have it go to a FTP location or an unmanaged disk location so that you can kind of keep track on a week-by-week basis what your system look like, you can do that. Web Intelligence Obfuscation tool. So this tool will let you to scrub the data in your Web Intelligence report so that you can send a Webby document with saved data to SAP for testing, but not have to worry about sensitive data in the report. Recycle bin metrics. So with the release of 4.2 that we're all very excited about, there's a number of different new kind of aspects that we should be reporting on, recycle bin metrics being one of them. So that's a big feature that we're looking to include. Complex alerts will most likely be in the 2.1 version. It's going to require a bit of an architecture change. But once this is rolled out, it will make the alerting features much more robust and customizable, obviously. A new export engine. So right now, one of our weaknesses is the PDF export. We're actually changing it from using a Crystal-based export engine to an OpenOffice-based export, which means that the data in the export will be based on what you see in the HTML output rather than based off of the XML. So long story short, what that means is that anytime that there's changes to the landscape report, we don't have to go and make another change to the exporting engine. Now we're doing it on a paginated basis, so any changes will be reflected immediately. So it'll be much better. Communications analysis will essentially kind of give you insight into communication, Corba communication between the client and the various servers in your landscape. So let's say you have the IDT and that needs to connect to various APS servers, but you're having communications issues. This will be a tool that will let you kind of understand what's not communicating correctly. Publications analysis will give you insight into your publications and the scheduling and kind of the metrics around that. And then performance analysis will be kind of an analysis of performance over a particular period of time. So the first thing I want to talk about is the BI Support dashboard. So the support portal has undergone lots of great changes. I think it's a lot easier to use. However, we decided we wanted a way to kind of build a dashboard around all the things that just the BI administrators could use. And that's essentially what we have here. All of the product documentation, the maintenance, so if we want to see what patches are available, or what the schedules for patches are, the product availability matrix, which points to a K-base that gives you the latest and greatest links to the PAN. And then the installation media, like your downloads for 4.1 and 4.2, and then the support packs. And then one support portal is something that's about to come out. So some of you may not have access to this yet, but this is a UI5 support kind of portal that you'll be able to use very soon. And then you can actually see all of your incidents and everything directly from this dashboard. You can view your incidents in CSS, access mobile documents, and then if you need to report an issue about the support tool itself, please use the link here for report an issue. And that will automatically bring up, well, I have to log in here. That will automatically bring up your, or our forum where you can just say, my support tool is crashing, or whatever the problem might be, and then give a description here, and then somebody from our development team will follow up with you and make sure that we get it fixed. Okay, so that's the support dashboard. Also, there's a quick search, so Tomcat is hanging. This will automatically search the K-base, Google, and the Bob forum all at the same time. So just kind of a quick link to get at the K-base there. Also, your SCN or Service Marketplace Passport or your single sign-on will automatically kind of be used from your default browser. So if you have that set up, then the support tool will automatically use that, as well as your proxy settings. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is kind of just go through and show you what the landscape configuration looks like. So what I'll do is actually do this live and just delete this configuration and then add it new so that you can see. What I've got here is just a single test system that has both BI and Tomcat, so your default kind of sandbox system. I've also installed the SAP Host Agent. Literally, if you haven't done this or don't know about that, it's a lot easier than installing, say, the diagnostic agent for Solution Manager. The Host Agent is a very small file, has a 0 to very, very small footprint on the server. It's very optimized for performance. And it just takes a couple minutes to install. You can see that here, Host Agent. Okay, so I'm going to create a new landscape. My CMS, first thing that happens is you can log on to your CMS. It will automatically detect your SIA nodes and create the servers list on the left-hand side. So what it creates automatically is your BI nodes. So I have one SIA node running on one host, and then this is the node. So the first thing that I'll do is configure the host agent. And this is the password that you set up when you install it. And this keeps the web service provider secure from anybody else that might try to connect to it. And hit the validate button. And then once it says validated, the connection's good. Network shares is kind of a backup for the end-to-end trace wizard. If you want to connect to your network over the network like a UNC path to use the end-to-end trace wizard, you can do that. Although we recommend the SAP Host Agent for that. So I'll just keep it with the Host Agent. And then the next step is to create a node for my web application server. Now, even though my Tomcat server is running on the same host as the BI stack, we consider it a separate node. So what we'll do is we hit Create, Web Application Server, and this is so that you can define more than one application server per host, per physical host. So if you have two Tomcats on the same host, you can create one or two entries, each with a different HTTP port. So this is on the same server, so I'm going to do win-2K8R20, and then the HTTP port is 8080. Now, we don't connect directly to this port. This is only used to define that particular instance and make it unique. So I'm going to click OK. And then we go and configure the host agent. Now, if you have a dedicated server that's just running Tomcat, you would want to install the host agent. If you already have the host agent on your BI server and your Tomcat's on your BI server, then you don't need to install it twice. You only need one SAP host agent. Although you should go ahead and configure it for both the application server node and the BI node, even if it's the same host. Okay, that's validated. The web application logging directories, for the end-to-end trace wizard, we need to know what's the local path on that application server where the web application logs are being stored. So that, depending on what user account you're running your application server under, and depending on what application it is, and what web application server brand you're using, whether it's Tomcat, WebSphere, WebLogic, whatever, that's going to be different. So in my case, I'm using Tomcat, and it's running under a user account, so it's actually under the users documents directory. So basically, I'm just going to grab the local path for the BI Launchpad logs, and paste it in here, and then grab the path for the CMC logs, paste it in here, and that's it. If you use Explorer and you want to do end-to-end tracing with Explorer, you can find those logs, put the path in there. Same thing with Queries to Web Service. Okay. Network shares we're not using, but again, if you can't install the host agent, you can use this as a workaround for log collection. And then the JMX settings. So this is the JMX listener port for your Tomcat server. In my case, I'm using port 8008. And you can see that here. Now, if you're connecting through a network address translation, this sandbox server is in a VMware cloud, and the IP address internally on that server is different from what my client sees it as. So if that's the case, you need to put the host name that's resolvable in this property here, and then put that in your host files on your client side, on the support tool side, and have it resolved to the external or the NAT IP address. Now, one thing we've discovered is that if your Tomcat server is behind a firewall and you're connecting through the firewall with the JMX connection, we discovered that it actually requires 2 ports to be open on the firewall, and that's going to requires a different JMX URL. So currently, you won't be able to do this until patch 2, where we're implementing a new interface here that will allow you to do that additional configuration, and there'll be more information on that coming soon. But if it's not behind a firewall that's blocking ports, then you can just put in the port and hit validate. You can also use authentication in a production environment. We definitely recommend that, so that just not anybody can connect to your JMX URL. Okay, and then that's it. This landscape is configured. If I had another Tomcat server on this server or this host, you would just hit create and then do, let's say, 8081 or 9080 or whatever the HTTP port is. And that's it. At this point, we can run the landscape analysis. Okay, so the first thing that you see in the landscape report is the alert summary. You can see what version was used to run this report, how long the report took to run, what the data date was, or the date that the data itself was extracted from the CMS, and then the cluster. And then remember, before I was talking about system alerts, the alerts that are defined by our development team. In this case, we found that one of the APSs contains all of the services and hasn't been split up yet. The Webby, under the server and services alerts, Web Intelligence still has enable memory analysis, which is no longer needed and can improve performance if you disable that. And then let's say you wanted to know what was the formula that was used to evaluate this alert. If you mouse over the eye, you can see what the name of the alert was, and also kind of what the description of what is an enable memory analysis. Well, it'll tell you what that property's description was. And then also what's the formula that was used to evaluate this. So we said if 1 is equal to 1, or 1 is true, or it's enabled, is equal to 1, then trigger the alert. Now, let me kind of sidetrack and show you about the alert definitions. So if we go here, we can see Web Intelligence Memory Analysis is the name of the alert. If we go to Preferences Alerts, we can actually find that alert. Web Intelligence Memory Analysis. Let's say that we didn't want this in there. We can hit remove. That would remove it. Or if we wanted to change the formula, we wanted it to always be enabled for whatever reason, we could say if it equals 0, then you get the picture. Also, you can create a new one. So let's say that you have a particular value or a timeout or a threshold or a metric rather that is interesting to you for whatever reason that you have. You can come in here and define your own alert. So we go to servers, for example, and then let's say the RAS server, metrics, report application. Let's say that we wanted to make sure that RAS didn't have more than, or didn't process more than 100 documents since it started up. We could just say documents at startup, and then whatever we wanted the description to be, you shouldn't run more than 100 documents. Of course, this is completely imaginary, just throwing out an example here. And we could say if the number of reports since startup is greater than 99, and then submit, and then you'll have that alert in there. And then the next time you run the report, it'll do that evaluation. Okay, so let's go to the report history here, and I want to show you a report from a bigger landscape. So let's take a look at this one. Each report, if you open up multiple reports, you can see the cluster, and they're separated by tabs in case you wanted to look at them kind of side by side. And then in here you'll see a lot. I intentionally went and broke a bunch of things in my environment and made some not so wise decisions for server settings so that we would trigger alerts all over the place. We can see here number of failed jobs. There was 9,000 failed jobs since startup. We've got a longest query, which is greater than 300 seconds. Tracing is turned to high. CMS jobs are failing. The output cache directory is set to use a UNC path, which although it can be advantageous, you want to make sure that you have the required network bandwidth, and also that you have the right patches. Otherwise, it could cause your environment to be unstable. So it's things like this that we want to try and catch in advance. Give you the KBase articles so that you can kind of fix it on your own so that it doesn't become a problem down the road. Alerts are also available for most of the analysis reports. For example, content, we could say, if we have X number of probe instances, we need to throw an alert. These aren't being cleaned up. Should implement limits, that sort of thing. Hardware alerts. Now, there is a little bit of a bug. If it's like a floppy drive or a network drive, it'll come up as 0 and trigger an alert. But we are checking to make sure you have at least 10 gigabytes on your system drive, so that will trigger an alert there. That's, obviously you can change that to whatever value that you feel comfortable with. And then web application server alerts, for example, compression was disabled on the Tomcat, and there's a fix for the compression crash that is talked about in this KBase. Okay, let's move on to the server and services. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this report. The hardware summary, this comes from the metrics of the server. So sometimes if the CMS server isn't running, then it won't give us the metrics we need to populate this information. Or there's some other reasons we're kind of looking into, but the reason why this message comes up is that the hardware analysis is capturing much more reliable information. In some cases, these metrics aren't even reporting correctly. I know that there's a bug on the BobJ side there. So if you're looking for hardware and OS information, always stick with the hardware report. Server version analysis checks your support pack level. However, it only checks the support pack level based on the metrics and the info objects. So we always recommend to look at the patch history to get the most detailed information. And then the individual tabs for these are your SIA nodes. And then all of the information about the SIA, the settings, everything that you're used to seeing in the CMC will be reported here. Now, one thing I should point out is that the alert summary, things that are happening in the alert summary, should also appear in the analysis report. So if I go to server and services and I find, let's say, the Webby enable memory analysis, let's see if we can find that. Go to the Webby processing server. Yeah, and then the alert was triggered here. And then there's more, the same details available in the summary are available down here at the bottom of the section. The comparison report is really useful for if you want a kind of a bird's eye view of all of your similar servers, categories. Let's say you want to compare all of your CMS servers to make sure they're configured the same with the same number of database connections, that sort of thing. So we can see them in a side-by-side fashion. Now, one improvement that was just made in the patch 1, which will be released in the next week or so, is a filter. So one thing you'll notice is that there's so much data it flies off the page. So we wanted to make it so that you can just pick which APS servers you want to compare. So if I want to just compare these two monitoring APSs, I can disable. And the magic of JavaScript and jQuery will readjust the view for you. So the content now has some pie charts. So we can see in this environment mainly have crystal reports, and then instances, I've got an out-of-control probe instance that has 67,000 instances. Should probably clean that up at some point. Authentication, again, this is just showing us which of the plugins you're using. This is particularly useful when you're creating an incident with the authentication team about, a third-party authentication, a single sign-on, or a group mapping update, whatever your problem might be. Definitely want to provide them this report. License keys, again, these are all the individual kind of things that you can do in BI, and it lets you know if that's available or not. And then the schedule analysis gives us a top 10 error messages, that reasons why reports are failing. And then now you can actually see which of those reports kind of made up that metric by mousing over. So in this case, it was just charting samples that failed 1,765 times. And then you can see what the parent ID is, so you can go find that report and fix it. Same with Webby, Crystal, top 10 just overall failing objects. Top 10 biggest instances. If you have disk space issues in your output FRS, you can figure out which of those reports are taking the most space, and then which reports are taking the longest to run. In this environment, just have sample reports, so it's really quick, but if you have any long-running epic reports, then those will appear in here. Hardware, again, is just giving us all of the metrics for the CPU, system, memory, operating system, file system, and then network card information. So pretty much anything we need to troubleshoot from a hardware standpoint will be in this report. Platform search, again, is about understanding your configuration for your platform search application, whether it's tuned correctly. And then, this is really valuable for support for troubleshooting those kind of performance issues that happen from platform search. The semantic layer is kind of an impact analysis. The orphan reports tell us which Webby reports don't have any universes associated with it. The connection analysis shows us which connections we have in our environment. And then dependency shows us each universe, how many objects are associated with that universe, what the path is to the objects, and when was that object last updated. The patch history, In this case, I've intentionally went and replaced the install manifest to trigger the system alert that tells you your servers are out of whack. They're not patched to the same build, so they're different. But you can see here this server was a dedicated Explorer server at 4.1 ST5. It was installed July 2nd. It's the build number, it's the user that installed it. And then on this server, we've got all sorts of different products, and then the order that they were installed. And that can be very important. Sometimes, what order you apply, the updates, the patches, the add-ons, that all can be important to make sure that you're successful. And then the application server report gives us the detail about your Tomcat server, what version you're using, what JVM, what your heap settings are, how many threads you've configured, and then we've got charts that kind of give you an overview of how many megabytes are currently in use. And this is just a snapshot when you ran the report. This isn't a trending type of data. The garbage collector information, JVM settings, Java options, Java system properties, and then OS details from the perspective of the JVM running on that host, and then the other various connector properties for the Tomcat server. Now, this was initially designed against Tomcat, although it should provide at least the non-Tomcat specific information from other application server types, because they all support the JMX and J2EE specifications. Okay, so if I want to take this report and send it to SAP, I would click File, Save As, and Save Landscape Analysis, and this will export it to a zip file. And then basically that will contain both the HTML export if you want to look at it offline. Also, the landscape data XML will be stored in there. So let's say I want to, let me just store it here. I'm going to store it in this folder here. And then if I want to reopen, if I want to open like an existing landscape report, you don't even have to go in and get the XML out. You can just say open landscape and then open the zip, and it'll get the XML automatically. If it contains a valid XML. Okay, so let me go ahead and move on here. So all of this data, or the majority of the data, can be used kind of, so if you run the report once a week, for example, and then you run into a problem during the week, and you want to know what settings have changed on the environment, you go to Change Analysis, and then you can select from your history. So let's say I'll compare the report on 11/30 and 12/10, hit Compare. Now we can tell what settings have changed between that gap in time. Here we can see the system database connections changed. This proxy or this setting, SSPI cache expiry has changed. The web WAX port has changed. And then you can look at things like hardware. Whatever's changed will be highlighted, and we could see that since these are all really dynamic metrics, that they have all changed. Nothing's changed with the OS, but if you applied a different kernel or something, that would show up. And then the same concept is applied. You can drill down to the servers and then compare server settings, that sort of thing. And if you want to change the comparison, you just come in here, uncheck this, check that, and then check whatever you want to compare next. Also, one thing I should mention, not all of the help dialogues are done, but most of them are done. If you click on the eye, the help dialog will pop up and give you more information about it. Hopefully in the next few patches, all of these will be done. The most important ones have been done already. Okay. Yeah, so the next thing I want to show you is the end-to-end trace. So the end-to-end trace, I'm sure most of you have done an end-to-end trace, and it's a pretty lengthy process. Especially, you have to go in, override the BO traces on all the servers, do your tracing, and then go collect all the log files, and then turn the trace back, the BO trace back. Well, the end-to-end trace is designed to automate this process. So you choose what your landscape is, and that's defined in your landscape configuration. So that's coming from that. So we're going to do an end-to-end trace against this server, and then use integrated SAP client plugin. We ship the plugin now with the support tool, and if you want to run it as administrator, which is sometimes required in order to make it work correctly, you just put in your local admin account. And then there's two types of log collections. BI log collection is from your BI nodes. Web app log collection is from your web application nodes. If you want to change that, you can do that there to shared folders if you've configured it that way. And then the override BO trace is what I was saying. It will override the BO trace, and then you can actually specify what you want that BO trace to look like. By default, we use these settings here. Okay, and then the record end-to-end session. So it'll actually do a video recording of your workflow, and then package everything up in a nice zip file, and you send that to support. And then if they've got a video of your workflow, they've got the end-to-end traces, they've got the business transaction XML, we've got everything that they need. So let's do the trace. One thing that happens is if you have any IE windows open, it will detect that and prompt you to close it. So I'll say OK. It's already gone out and overridden my BO trace. I just want to show you that. So you can see here, this was the original BO trace, and this is the one we overrode, and the settings, and then the original settings. Now, if for some reason that if you go halfway through the end-to-end trace and something happens, it crashes or whatever, just go back, take a look at your conf directory, and just make sure that you restore it back to the default. And you can do that by just renaming or copying this and rename it back to botrace.ini. But if the end-to-end trace goes through, everything it will always revert it back if you chose to do that. Okay, so the SAP client plugin is started. Hit launch. Okay, and then BI log on. And then set it to high, and then queue up your browser. Okay, start transaction. And log in. When the requests and responses go up, that means it's working. Okay, the login is finished. Hit stop transaction. Okay, close that. It'll close your browser, and then you're ready to move on. So it's automatically loaded your business transaction XML, the most recent one. You can see my BI log on, and now it's ready to do the collection. So right now it's reaching out to the host agents. The host agents are collecting the logs. They compress them into a SAR file, and then send that SAR file over the web service back to the BI support tool, and it'll decompress it and then stick it in the E2E work directory under the transaction ID. It's collecting the web application server logs. In the bottom right, you can see what it's currently working on. Now it's compressing it to a zip file, reverting your botrace.ini. So if we go back, we can see it's back to the original. So we're good to go there. And then you can see what the collection result was for each of the nodes involved in the transaction. And then you can go straight to your logs by clicking there. So here's all the logs that we need to send to SAP. One thing I want to point out is that your web application server logs will be renamed so that they're unique, because if we combine logs from more than one web application server, they'll overwrite themselves. So now we're renaming these, and that was a fix that went into patch 1. And then it automatically creates a zip file for you. And if we want, we could take a look, go to the screen recorder. So if you want to record one of your reproduction workflows, you found a bug in BI platform or whatever, you want to make a recording, you can also use this to make a recording. And we can use it as well to play a recording. So now I can play back the end-to-end trace that we just did. I'll just hit fast forward. You can see everything that I just did. So now we can see exactly what your workflow looks like without even having to do a Citrix connection. Okay. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is the landscape tools. So this is a place for kind of the individual things that we used to have scripts for. Now we're building them into the tool. Things like the Enterprise Alias Manager. If you don't want to lose those AD users that were created when you mapped in your Active Directory group, you need to create an enterprise alias under that group so that the group becomes unmapped. It doesn't disappear if you kind of lose connection to your domain controller. So you can create those directly here or remove them. Also, this is the one thing in the support tool currently that does make a modification to your CMS. Nothing else does. So please make sure that you know what you're doing here and you take backups of your CMS database. Export rights ID is a way for you to find an object in your BI landscape and then export all the user principals associated with that object. So we want to know what rights are set for a particular folder, for example. The passport decoder takes a business transaction XML and gives you an interscope query filter that you can use to query in the transaction tracer and interscope. This does require a bit of an update, we've discovered. So currently it only gives you one step of a transaction, but we'll be improving that in the future version here. Okay, now I made a mistake. So export rights IDs exports all of the CMS rights IDs for objects in the CMS log files so that we can use that to kind of understand when a rights check happens on an object in the CMS, we use that to kind of decode that. The security analyzer is what actually lets you export the rights for an object. So right now it's connecting, it's building the folder structure for my CMS server, and now I can kind of browse through here and say, okay, I want to know what the rights are for such and such user, and then export it, and it'll export it to a CSV file. And we do plan to improve this, maybe add recursion or other things to this, since it's kind of a nice interface that we can build on. The universe analyzer takes your universes and then basically looks at all of the objects in the universe and then connects to your database and makes sure that the database tables and objects are consistent with the objects that you have in your universe. This feature was actually developed by the Webby kind of guru developer in France. So this is kind of some voodoo magic, and it could be pretty useful to understand if your universes are out of sync with the database tables that they're built against. Now, here it says convert universes. It has to use an older API to do the check. So basically, or a newer API rather. So it takes your older universes and converts it to a UNX universe. But it's not a permanent thing. It happens all on the client side, so nothing to worry about there. And then lastly, the connections analyzer basically does kind of a test. So it goes through each of your connections and does kind of what you would do in the universe designer to test the connectivity for that connection. And it does it all kind of, does them all for you at one time. Okay. the very last thing that I didn't mention, if you're going to set up Active Directory or LDAP, SSO, or SAP authentication, any of these types of authentications, now we have a wizard that will help you do that. So if you're going to set this up, I would definitely recommend to use the wizard. It will do everything from collect all the relevant information to creating an email that you send to your Active Directory administrator that tells him exactly what he needs to do. And the same thing for each of the authentication types. Is most of the overhead for the tool on the server or client in terms of processing? It's definitely on the client. The only thing that's happening on the server side is the InfoStore queries. And for our queries, we use an algorithm that queries in small queries and smaller batches. And that batch size is configurable. So let's say you have a CMS system database that has 5 million objects or something like that. We're able to kind of chunk our way through that by querying for smaller numbers using very optimized queries. And then that batch size, the chunk size that we use, is configurable in the preferences section. So in some cases that might be helpful to kind of tweak that to make it, for example, if you query, for 1,000 objects and that times out because your database is kind of running slow, then obviously we need to kind of do some tuning on your database, rebuild the indexes, but also you can kind of do some tweaking on the client side to adjust for that.
Hey, Toby, one thing that was just brought up recently, maybe you can touch on, is the use of the host agent with the E2E. So I guess in version, 1.2, we required host access to update the BioTrace INI, right? Through the use of like folder shares.
Yeah.
I mean, this was your part of the code, so can you maybe explain how we use the host agent if it's there to do that?
How do we use the host agent to do
that?
Well,
no, as far as host access to the BioTrace INI.
Like using a network access.
Yeah. So
okay. Yeah. So I can show that real quick. So let's say that we don't have a host agent. We can't install it for whatever reason. So if you go to network shares, and we're in the landscape configuration, first you have to enable the use of network shares, and then you have to provide a path to the BioTrace INI. So what I would do is go to my server, and then I need to share out the location of that. So sharing, advanced, share this. You could lock it down to whatever user you'd be connecting with. Click OK. And then we have a shared folder, right? Also, for the BioTrace INI, for this directory, we need to make sure that it has write access since we're writing to the BioTrace INI. So I could just say, for whatever, obviously you wouldn't do this in real life, but for the purposes of this test. And then the other thing we need to do is share out the logging folder. So let me go back here. For the BioTrace, I would paste the path and then put in my account that I want to authenticate with. So that would be actually I'm going to use a local user on the server. And let me just make sure that I have access to that. Okay, yeah, so I have access there. And then you just hit OK. Okay, so that's the location of the BioTrace INI. And then here we can add whatever logging folders we want to collect from. So let's share this. Sharing. And then this one only needs read access. And then your logon. One thing I want to point out as well is any logons that you put in here is always encrypted, and the encryption is done such that it's only valid for your computer. So if you send somebody your landscape configuration, your preferences file, they won't ever be able to decode the actual passwords. Okay, and then so you would do that for your BI node, and then for the app server, you need to add each of the. You don't need to do the BO trace because the app server doesn't use the BO trace, and then you just need to add your web application logging folders, kind of like we did for the host agent, but instead you would use the UNC path. So like this. Yep.
What software catalog is a support tool under?
So there's multiple delivery tracks for SAP releases. Our delivery track is called the SCN delivery track. So it's not on the service marketplace. It's at the SAP store. So it's not under a particular software catalog per se. It's kind of, I'll show you what that looks like. So if you come here, you can download it from here. And this is going to take you to the SAP store. And then when you go to download it, you'll, for the first time that you go to download something from the SAP store, it'll ask you to register. This is using your SCN logon credentials. So you just register once to the SAP store, then you can download anything that's on there. And then, yeah, so kind of like that. It's pretty painless. And then at that point, the download will download just like it did from the mobile docs. Also, as far as like upgrading your client, if you refer to the wiki page, there's a tutorial on how to update your client. And really it's as simple as getting rid of the install folder and then reinstalling it. And then it automatically will pick up on all of your user settings from your user's roaming profile. So that's it. There's no actual installation. It just unpacks the files. And we ship the SAP JVM, so it runs off of its own JVM also. So.
Hey Toby, this is Josh. It might be worth mentioning that we've seen a few cases where customers are installing it, and there's a step where you need to copy the operations.d folder for the host agent over to each BI node. So have you updated the wiki yet on that step so that's a little clearer, or maybe we need to?
Well, I can show you what that looks like real quick.
Yeah, basically for you guys installing the host agent, you install that on each BI node, and then
first of all, there's a tutorial on installing the host agent. It's very simple, and then one of the steps is to copy the. I think I skipped it. Yeah, here it is. So in your BI Support Tool installation directory, there's this folder under bin, operations, and then whatever OS your BI server is on. You can just copy the operations.d folder to the exe directory where you install the host agent on the server, and that's it. So if you're on Unix, you go into the Unix folder, grab the operations.d folder, go to where you installed on the server the host agent, and just put the folder there. Same workflow.